Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? My name is Denonu, and I'm one half of the Neo Digital podcast channel here that you guys are currently watching this video on. And I'm apologizing for not having the webcam up. I just felt like making a quick video here with just myself talking about hardware questions and things like that, because I just felt like making a video. I know me and Jolly, we haven't put out a video probably in about a couple days. I know we got some things coming down the pipeline, but as far as for yesterday and today, I know we didn't really upload anything to the channel. So I'm gonna do this quick video here and just talk about my experience with, let's say, audio quality, hardware, software, that kind of sort of a thing. So if you're interested in getting into, I would say, YouTube in general, this can also apply for streaming, and this also can apply for podcasts if that's your thing. I read a lot of forums and stuff on Reddit, many other websites, and things like that, and people who are just starting out. They don't know what hardware to get. They don't know what kind of computers to build. They don't really know a whole lot about it because they don't have the experience. So they watch YouTube videos, they go on forums, they see what other people have, and then kind of try to buy the same things and expecting to get the same kind of quality out of what they do or what they plan to do. And I guess you could go about it that route, but the problem with doing that is not everybody has the same setups. That's just the reality of it. When it comes down to your computer, you can build the same computer as somebody else and not get the same performance out of it. It comes down to probably about a bunch of different things. The hardware you have, the microphone you're using, the audio hardware and setup that you have, the room that you're in, the internet connection that you have, the speed at which your connection operates, because that's a big one. And it can even come down to just the sound of your voice. Everybody's voice is a little bit different. Nobody has the same vibrations or the same patterns of when they talk and stuff like that. So I'm just going to explain to you guys what I have and just a little bit of the experience that I have with, audio and YouTube and that kind of sort of a thing. This isn't going to be an in-depth video unless you guys want to see that. Let me know down in the comments. I don't mind breaking down everything. But I've been doing YouTube since 2009, 2010. I started out with what did they call them back in the day? Dazzle capture cards, trying to get HD back when that was still becoming a thing. And I think the first mic that I had was just a generic computer desktop microphone that kind of just sat on your desk. It was one of those ones that had like the really long neck to it, a little teeny small thing. But I've used microphones from that to lavalier mics to I've had both Yetis. I've had a Snowball, a Yeti, and a Yeti Pro. I've had I forget the type of shotgun mic that I've had, but I have one of them. I've even tried Bluetooth microphones, like the mod mics that connect Bluetooth to a wireless microphone. You just kind of put to your any headset. I've bought a couple of those, and over the course of using everything, I will say this: if you're starting out, the best tip I could give you is to save up and buy something decent. If you have, let's say, a generic microphone around the house and you want to get started quickly, hey, use that. It is what it is. But if you're planning to save money to get a mic, don't just settle for something cheap. Don't. With any electronics, and I'm somebody who's been buying electronics for like most of my life, you don't want to go too cheap. You don't want to pay an ass load of money for something expensive either, but you want something that you got to put a little bit of money to. If I was starting out today, I would say get a Snowball, maybe get a Yeti. You know, they're not stupid expensive. It's not as expensive as, let's say, like the Shure SM7B. I think that's what a lot of YouTubers and podcasts and stuff use. But if you get a Snowball or a Yeti, I think I know back when I bought mine, the Yetis were like a little over $100 to get. I think the regular Yeti, and then if you get the Pro, it was a little bit more because it did XLR. Get to that in a little bit, but that will at least overcome the shitty microphone hurdle, so to speak, because all of them are decent microphones for what they do. If you want something that's easily accessible, get a USB mic versus an XLR mic. An XLR mic, they work better. They're going to give you a better quality of sound, but most people on YouTube probably don't even care about that, to be honest. I'm a stickler for it because I love my audio. You know, I always trying to get things perfect. Jolly has told me many a times to be like, no, man, you sound perfect. Stop changing shit. But on my end, hell, I made like 5 or 10 different audio changes before making this video since the last video you guys see me on the channel. And, you know, I'm just somebody who I like to hear that perfect. I want that radio sound every time I record something. And even though I don't particularly get that, it's that kind of goal that I set for myself and for the audio here. So if you have an XLR setup, and if you get some more equipment, which I'll, you know, touch on some of the stuff that I got to get the sound that you guys are hearing. But if you get some extra equipment, it's going to cost you guys some money. Probably, let's say at most, I would think, outside of the microphone, because that could be like a price point in itself, but save up probably about $600. With that $600 outside of the computer, you know, that you're using, because that's that can be a price, you know, a price point depending on whatever kind of computer you get. But we're gonna touch on that after we touch about the audio stuff. But for the audio equipment, you want to at least get, if you had the choice, you know, like I said, you can get a USB mic and be just fine. You don't have to get an XLR mic. But if it were me, just for the better quality, usually an XLR mic is better. So I think the Yeti Pro supports XLR. I haven't used it in years. I think I actually gave it to Jolly, if I remember right. And I think that's what he records with, but I could be wrong. I haven't spoke to him about that in years. But XLR gives you a better quality. You're going to get a more professional soundstage out of your equipment. Now, besides that, you can get a compressor. I think the one I have is the DBX 286S, I believe. And that will allow you to gate out the, you know, the background noise. You can increase the lows and the high frequencies. You can compress your vocal sound to kind of touch it up a little bit. So if your voice is, let's say, too deep or too airy, you know, you can make some adjustments to kind of clean that up. Now, in addition to that, what you guys also hear me using here is also have a hardware EQ set up. I forgot the particular model. I'll try to throw, I know most of my stuff I bought off of Amazon, so I can probably go back in my orders list, and I'll probably throw all of it in the description below. But I have an EQ by the same company. Now, the reason why it's by the same company and not just any EQ is I wanted, usually most companies make things to be similar, so to speak. So I didn't want to have one hardware that's made by another company and then have another piece of hardware that's made by a different company, because they all have their own ways of doing things. And a lot of the time that will bump heads, essentially, and that may cause conflicts. If you have, if you guys had any kind of electronics equipment or computer equipment, try to mix up different hardwares, and like you will see random glitchy problems start to happen. A signal may not get converted right, or when it does, it may not input it right, and it's just it causes all kinds of weird little minute problems. So I didn't want any of that. I have the microphone that I have is that's probably what, well, outside of my PC, because I probably spent a whole lot of money on that. But as far as audio, the microphone that I have is expensive. It's probably $1,100. It's the Neumann, I think TLM 103, I believe. And again, that's something you don't need. It's something it's cool to have it. I bought it. I bought it just because, you know, I have the additional money to do so, but you do not need it. If you want to get a good high quality microphone, like I said before, the Shure microphones, they're pretty good. You know, they're pretty decent. That's the big black cylinder microphone that everybody pretty much on YouTube and podcasts and stuff use. They either use that, or I think it's the AT Audio Technica 2020, I believe. That's also a damn good microphone to use. And like I said before, for ease of access, you can get any kind of USB microphone, like a Yeti Pro, a Snowball. They'll give you decent enough quality for the most part. Now, outside of that, usually what determines a lot of the audio quality is the room that you're in. You know, that's the biggest thing that compounds everybody's audio problems. Like me, when I was starting out, I know for years I had a pet dog. And if you guys go back to my older channel and watch some of my videos, he would bark and stuff in the videos all the times and things like that. And that's because I didn't have the hardware EQ and the compressor to kind of gate out a lot of that background noise. You can do it with software too. So I'm not saying you don't have to have hardware, but I'm a hardware person only because I like it to work separately, because I don't want to let my computer do most of the heavy lifting, so to speak. I'll touch into that a little bit later when I talk about the computer side of things. But if you have your hardware do most of the audio configurations, so to speak, versus using plugins or DAWs and stuff on the software side of things, then it's going to cost you more money initially. But if you treat your hardware good, that hardware will last you years, like 5-10 years, you know, things like that. So it's one of those things where it's like, do you invest in it early or just go with what you got? And I'm a big stickler for, no, save up your money until you're ready, just like you do anything in life, because plans may change. You know, you always want to save up money before you do something and then get what you need. You know, I'm a big stickler for that. So that's why I say get hardware that does it separately. But once you get that hardware, you just have to manually set it up. And that's going to be the biggest hurdle. It's not hard. They all come with instructions on how to do what it does. There's plenty of YouTube videos of people in the same positions giving reviews and talking about the different hardwares and stuff like that. So you can easily go up and search for any type of audio equipment and learn what it does, learn what people are saying about it, and then determine what to buy. But once you have what you want, you have to fine tune it. And that's the biggest probably hurdle, because once you hook it up and you can record with it just fine, you have to fine tune everything. You have to take your audio hardware and pretty much tweak it and set it up for your room environment. Like me, I record in my bedroom. It may not sound like it. You probably don't get a whole lot of reverb and everything like that because of my hardware, but I record in my bedroom. Like right now, I'm looking at my big, probably 68-inch television that's like 3 feet away from me right now. I also got like 4 other additional monitors alongside of that, but I'm looking at a big ass screen in front of my face. Now, my voice is probably bouncing off of that because it's probably going past the microphone, bouncing back. It's bouncing off the walls in my room and hitting the microphone again. Now, not all microphones are made equally. Let me repeat this. Not all microphones are made equally. So that's where you gotta look into the microphone that you plan to get and then see how it handles additional sounds coming in. Like the microphone that I'm using, the Neumann, they make damn good microphones. It's that German perfected quality. I think even when I bought it, it came in like a nice oil wood box. That's how much they appreciate these microphones when they make them. They're like a premium type of microphone. A lot of voice recorders, musicians, and stuff go with their brand. And usually a lot of their good mics cost like over $1,000, like from like 1,500, 2 grand, 3 grand, that kind of sort of thing. People have been using them for years. But when you get another microphone, let's say like the Shure SM7B or maybe a Yeti, the Yeti has, let's say, multiple patterns on it that you can use to kind of set it how you want. Not every microphone is going to be the same. So you can get a Shure SM7B and let's say get a Yeti Pro and then get the Neumann TLM 103 like I have. And you can hook them all up and talk into them with the same voice because your voice isn't changing. And they could make your voice sound completely different based on the room that you're in, even if you're in the same room, because they all take in that audio a little bit differently. You know, it's kind of like somebody's fingerprint. The patterns, the cadence of your voice, the tone of your voice, the reflection in your voice, the syllables when you say words, all of that plays into consideration when you record audio. So you have to find the mic, or not really find the mic. It's kind of hard to do that without trying them out. But certain mics are made to take in a certain type of voice and make it sound better. For instance, this mic that I have, the Neumann, gives you a more warmer sound with the voice. So my voice is already on the deeper side of things. I don't have a light sounding voice. I think my voice is about average. I'm not the chocolate rain guy or the homeless man with the golden voice, but I have an average, I don't want to sound racial, but I have an average black man sounding voice. You know, it's nothing too deep. It's not too light. You know, it's kind of like medium range. It's in that warm range of audio. So when I bought this mic, I was like, okay, this mic is known to give a warmer sound. Since that's the type of sound that I want, let me get this microphone, you know, and for a bunch of other reasons I got it too. But if for instance, I got a Shure SM7B, that may make my voice not give the same sound. So it'll sound a little bit differently. And if you go to like a Snowball or a Yeti, it's going to sound even different than that, because those aren't, well, I can't say with the Yeti Pro. The Yeti Pro is pretty decent. But if you go back to like a Snowball, that's not a premium microphone. It's a damn good microphone, don't get me wrong, but it's not a premium sounding one. So the sound that you get out of that, let's say compared to the Shure or the Neumann or the Audio-Technica, won't be the same. So those mics will change the sound of your voice based on, you know, the sound, just how they build them, and a bunch of other factors. So once you find the mic's sound that you like, and that's going to be something that's going to be hard to do. Because like I said, without trying them out yourself, you can't watch a YouTube video, hear somebody's review on it and say, oh, I think this mic sounds good. This makes my voice sound okay. That's for them, not for you. So you kind of have to go out on a limb a little bit, or drive around to mic stores and music stores. A lot of times they sell the same microphones and stuff that people use on YouTube for audio and everywhere else. So if you go to like a music store and try out the microphone, at least then you can hear the different microphones, hear how your voice sounds with them. But you basically just have to get used to or read up on how well, you know, the microphones translate voice. A lot of times on the manufacturer's websites, they'll tell you like, oh, this mic gives a warmer sound, or this mic is made for people with a neutral sounding voice, or, you know, they'll tell you that because they, you know, musicians, they need to know a lot of that things from when they buy a microphone. A lot of times with musicians and stuff, or let's say mixers or producers rather, I'm not in the musical field, so I don't know who does what, but I do know that they buy microphones that are, let's say, specific to a vocalist's voice, you know, because not everybody has the same voice. Some microphones lean into the higher range of things. So let's say if you have a singer that can hit those high notes and those higher frequencies, obviously you don't want a microphone that's set for a low frequency. person's voice, you know, because then you won't hear none of that. So that's what I'm saying. You have to get something that's made for your voice. If you have a deep voice, you know, and plus it all depends on how you want your sound too. You may not want the deeper radio quality voice that, let's say, I have, but that's just what I like when I hear audio. So that's what I go with. But if you like something different, then go with a different mic that gives you that kind of clarity, whatever it is that that you're looking for. I'm not saying you have to get that warm audio. You definitely don't. It's all down to personal preference. But once you find that, like I said, you have to fine tune your equipment. You have to go through every setting. Probably the next big step, I would say, is once you have everything hooked up and, you know, you're able to record with it, you have to find the right volume level. Every microphone and everybody's setup has a, I forget the word for it, but there's a pattern around the microphone with how they made to record. If you ever looked at microphones or images or reviews and stuff like that, they'll show like the little microphone with like a heart-shaped circle around it, or some other kind of line that goes around it in a circle maybe, or stuff like that. That tells you how the mic takes in audio. So you have to find what range and volume you need to record at. That's the biggest level. Certain audio equipment like a compressor will fix that a little bit better, and I'll get into that in a second. But you have to record at different volume ranges to see what level you want your videos at. Or you can just record low, and then when you record something, when you're editing it, bump up the volume. To quote the title of that old ass song that nobody probably knows anymore. But outside of that, you have to gauge the distance that you're from the microphone too, because that changes how the microphone will hear your voice. Like now I'm probably 8 inches from my microphone, maybe 6 to 8 inches. But if I get really close like this, you know, my compressor is probably evening out my voice. But the closer you move into the microphone, like right now, I'm like right next to my pop filter, it will make your voice louder. So you have to find that sweet spot in your voice, because right now, like if I didn't have my compressor, I'd be blowing out my microphone right now. You guys would be hearing tons of popping noises or peaking with the microphone and stuff like that. But that's why you have that additional equipment. You don't need it. It all comes down on how you talk into your microphone. That's the biggest thing. You know, once you have everything, that's the biggest one that you got to do. You have to find whatever your spot is. For me, the microphone is right in front of my mouth, because that's how they make it. You know, this is a front address microphone. A lot of people will go out and buy the Shure SM7B or a Yeti or a Yeti Pro and just kind of point it at their mouth, because that's what they say, you know, that's what they see singers and musicians do. That's not the case. That's not how you use, you know, let's say a Yeti, because that's a side address microphone too. The Shure, that's how you use that, because that's how they make it. But you have to use your microphone the way they intend you to use it, unless you use it in a very particular way that gives you the sound that you want. You don't have to use the mics the way that they're intended. You can kind of point them at your mouth, talk at them, or talk past the microphone versus talking into them. And that will change how your voice gets recorded using the microphone. So if you prefer that, then you can do that. But a lot of the times, if you want the mic to work the way it's intended, you have to use it in the way that it's intended. So you have to just read the manuals and just, you know, see what's the best way to use your microphone, and just experiment. You know, hook everything up, record a test clip, saying some words, hear how your voice sounds, and then record another one, hear how it sounds, and then record another one, hear how it sounds, you know, and just kind of make changes in between every recording to see what the best quality and stuff is. And, you know, you have to go through all of the settings and the controls of the equipment and stuff like that. So that's the biggest thing. You know, you just have to fine tune it. So when I say fine tune, that's what you have to do, you know, essentially. The next thing I would do, besides just the input equipment, is, depending on what type of microphone and hardware you have to get some kind of an interface to the computer. If you get, let's say, a Snowball or a Yeti and you output by USB, then you're just fine. You know, you can hook that up to a USB port on your computer and it should find it. If you're doing something like an XLR microphone, then you have to have some type of an interface. Either whether that's a mixer or a little, what's the other company? I remember buying one years ago, but man, I can't think of the name. I'll throw it in the description, but there's a company that makes a USB interface that's like a little red box, and you have one mic port on it or two mic ports, but you have to get a USB interface, you know, if you go XLR. And you may also need something called a cloud lifter too. It all depends on what type of microphone you use. A lot of XLR microphones need phantom power. And what that is that's an additional voltage that the microphone needs in order to amp up your voice in recordings a lot of the time. And depending on the microphone, you may need an additional, you know, volume boost essentially. That's what I think those cloud lifters do. I didn't want to get into that, so the microphone that I bought and the hardware that I have, I don't need that, you know, so I don't have one of those. But I do know that a lot of people, when they buy certain microphones, they kind of have to have those in order for the recordings to sound as loud as they could be, you know. Usually a lot of XLR microphones, and you can even test this with a lot of other microphones too, a lot of XLR microphones need an external device to give them a volume boost a lot of the times. So let's say like with my microphone, it doesn't have a volume button on it. I can't turn it up on the microphone. You know, you have to have an interface that has a volume button on it, or let's say like my EQ and compressor, they have preamps built in that I can plug it into and use that to bump up the volume. So that's why I don't particularly need one. Again, that's another reason why I chose hardware versus software, because you can do it in software, but a lot of the times it may not sound as clear because not everybody makes software the same either. So you could record in, let's say, OBS or one particular audio program and have your voice sound one way, and then record using like a video editing software and have it sound completely different because they use different drivers, different software, different plugins and stuff like that. So usually that's why I said that's why I go with hardware, because with hardware you can make your voice sound one way and just have the computer record it. You don't have to have the computer tweak anything or set everything up, you know, or do any changes after the fact, unless you wanted to specifically do that in editing, you know, and that's a whole nother ball of wax and stuff like that, depending on how you want your audio to sound. But in this video here, we're just gonna be focused on the equipment side of things. So with that there, once you take in the audio into whatever interface you get, I would say do some research into interfaces too. Not everybody makes interfaces the same. I've tried at least probably 3 of them. I've tried the little red one that I told you I had. I also have another one made by, I think it's called the Audient ID14, which is like another $200 interface that kicks it out to the computer by USB. That sounds damn good too. You know, it's nice and it's clear and stuff like that. But what you guys hear me on now is I got a mixer that was also like $200 or $300. I forget the model. Like I said, I'll throw it down in the description, but that gives me a whole, not a whole lot better, but it gives me a nice clearer sound with it. And plus, at least with a mixer that has additional inputs, you can plug up more than one mic to it. A lot of times, if you're doing a podcast in the same room with maybe like 2 or 3 of your friends, you can get 4 or 5 different inputs into a mixer, depending on which kind you get. You know, they make them so that they do 2 devices, 3 devices, 4, 5, 6, 7, hell, some even go up to like 14 or 15 for different audio setups and hardware and stuff. So with a mixer, you can take what you get from the microphone and fine tune it, you know, essentially. Like, and a lot of times you may not even need the extra additional hardware like I have. Like I said before, the EQ and a compressor on top of that. I can take my mic directly into my mixer and then have it go into the computer too. I just won't get the benefits that additional hardware, you know, supplies. You know, the mixers, usually most of the time you have volume controls, EQ controls, and maybe a few other settings here and there, depending on what you want to do. A lot of times they're not going to gate out the audio or compress it or do additional features and things like that. So that's the reason why I got those other two hardwares in the beginning. But you don't have to have them. Like I said before, you don't need none of this. It's just how good you want your audio to sound. And once you get all of that hooked up and you figure out what kind of interface you want, you can hook it all up, fine tune it, because you have to do that the same way. And then you just feed it into the computer. Now, to jump onto that, because like I said before, we were going to get into it. The reason I set everything up to do hardware is because another thing that I notice is a lot of people on the internet, they will not spend the money they need in order to get a beast of a computer. That's just the reality of it. It's, I've been messing around with computers probably since I was about 8 years old, and I'm 37 now. Well, 36. I'll be 37 come August. And I've always had, you know, a beast of a computer. You know, when I was messing around with them as kids, when I started buying my own computers, you know, coming out of middle school and high school and stuff like that, you always want to get, well, in my opinion, I mean, you get what you need, of course, but in my opinion, depending on what you want to do, you always want to do more. You don't ever want to do less. And that's because if you go less, let's say if you want to play, I'm just going to pick a game here. Let's say the new Battlefield game when it comes out, and you're like, I want to build a new computer to play Battlefield. You can see what the specs are for the game and then buy the computer to that spec and play the game. Now, the reason why I said you want more is I always equate it to just like anything else. You want it to have more overhead. And what I mean by that is, if you tailor build a computer to play the new Battlefield game, what if you wanted to record it and stream it? Now, your computer may be strong enough to play the game, and you may be able to play it fine without any problems. But the moment you hit that record button or you start streaming, now your computer has to do twice the work. You know? So now, when you're recording it, your game, when you're playing it, may be sluggy, it may drop frames, the FPS may go all the way down, because your computer isn't strong enough to do both of it at the same time. You know, that's what I'm trying to get to. So you want enough system resources and enough power and enough beefiness in your computer to be able to do both. That's why if you look at a lot of YouTube channels and podcasts, people always talk about, oh, that's my streaming PC, and that's my PC that I edit with. They have like two computers to stream, essentially. One to record and then one to play the game on. And me, I'm like, fuck that. You know, we're PC master race over these parts. Why do I need two computers to do anything? So when I put together my computer, and if you guys, if you guys want, I'll put my parts in there in the description too, so you guys can see what I have that I bought over the years. But when I stream, I can stream at any quality that I want, and record at any quality that I want, and play the game typically at any quality that I want. I can't say I can record in 4K, but it's just not viable to do 4K because it'll make certain things drop frames and stuff when it's recording and stuff like that. So usually, if I'm recording at everything, I'll record my my video and all of that stuff at, I think, like at 1440, and then I'll render it out in 1440. Upload it at 1440 to YouTube, and then that's what YouTube will show you guys, typically. So you don't have to do that, but I know a lot of people's computers can do that because they lowball their specs when they're building it. They'll be like, oh, I don't have the money to get this graphics card, so I'll get this other one instead. And yeah, that's strong enough to run the game, but it's not strong enough to record and stream at the same time and play the game. You know, so that's going to be the line that you got to cross where you can be like, well, okay, well, how much memory does my computer need? What type of graphics card I'm looking to get? You know, that's where your finances kind of come into play. You have to pretty much figure out what you can get with your money, or do you want to save up to get better stuff? In my opinion, I would save up to get better stuff. That way you don't have to worry about it. I buy a computer, or let's say change parts in my computer probably every 2 or 3 years. So like probably the next thing I'm going to get is probably maybe the new GTX 3080 when it drops. So it's one of those things where it's like, you don't have to do that. You know, you can lowball yourself and get a cheaper graphics card, but then that may affect everything going forward as far as, you know, your recording and streaming. If you're just looking to play something, then hey, you may not need to get better hardware, you know, but put some money into it. Something you want at least 16 gigs of RAM or higher. You know, you want a graphics card that can not only play the game, but play it without problems. So you got to research that and see what graphics card works for you. You want a processor that's going to be fast. And not only does it have to be fast, but usually you want something that can run games without problems and run multiple programs at one time. So, and that's not every processor either. Like, I'm a fan of the Threadripper class of processors. I think I have the what's it called? The 3900X Threadripper, I think. Don't quote me. I'll throw it down in the description, but that gives me the ability. It has like, I think like 12 cores, and it can run anything I throw at it, essentially. I can run 50 billion programs at one time. And I wanted that because, again, you're recording, streaming, and playing the game at one time. You have to have a processor that can do all of that at one time. If you get, let's say like an older Intel processor that can run games really good, yeah, it may be good at running that one thing, but can it run streaming, recording, playing the game, and running your computer and whatever audio setups you got kicked out to, you know, your headsets or your audio hardware? You know, you have to think about all of that stuff. That's another reason, like I said, I got hardware in the beginning. Because if you can, like I said, use software to gate out the audio, to compress your audio, but your computer has to run all of those plugins. So again, if your computer wasn't strong enough to run all of that stuff at the time when you're recording or streaming, then that's going to cause problems and issues. You know, that's going to cause, you know, your audio or your video not to be as perfect as it could be. So that's why I said it's always best to save up money to get something better, because then you can get the overhead that you're looking for with your computer. Like I said, you don't got to be stupid and spend $5,000 on a computer, you know, that's going to give you like 120 gigabytes of RAM, and it's going to have the latest TI graphics card and the newest processor that comes out that probably costs $1,500 or $100 or $2,000. You don't have to go that route, but you want to get something that you have to put money into, and you want something that's going to be that you want it to do what you want it to do. You know, don't just sit with the bare minimum. Don't do that when it comes to PCs. If you're not recording, if you're not doing YouTube and you just want to play your game, okay, yeah, do that. But if you're doing anything else with the computer, like streaming, recordings, YouTube, hell, even if you're doing like 3D videos or using Blender to make those 3D porn videos that people show up on YouTube and, oh, not YouTube, but Pornhub and stuff like that. You know, I'm sure that uses good processing power too, you know, because a lot of those 3D or engineering, architectural softwares and stuff like that, that uses a lot of processing power to run those softwares too. So that's why I said you want to get something that's going to give you enough power to do a lot of that stuff. And when it comes to everything else too, speaking of power, when you get a power supply, it's the same difference. Right now inside of my computer, I think I have a power supply that does 800 to 1,000 watts. I wanted something that can kick out a lot of power to my system because I have a lot of hard drives in there. The motherboard I got is a high-end motherboard. I have a lot of high-end parts inside the computer. So the more parts you add to something, the more power a lot of things need. You don't have to overdo with power, but it's one of those things where it's just like your body. Like, do you give your body just enough food to operate? Or do you want to have it a little bit more in case it runs into anything? Again, it all comes back around to that overhead. It's the same thing for memory. You want to have at least enough memory to do what you want, but in my opinion, it's always best to have more, a little bit more. So usually anything above 16 gigs for most people, that's fine. There's not a lot of programs out there that's gonna, use that additional RAM as of yet. I think on my computer right now, I have I think like over 40 gigabytes of RAM. Like I think I have like 42 or 62, something like that. But I know it's the one that's the next up from I think 32. So I think it may be like it's somewhere in between 40 and 50. But you don't need to have a lot of that. That's extra. If you're getting 16 gigabytes of RAM, most programs can run fine with that. Don't get just 8 gigabytes of RAM and expect your computer to be the best of the best. Yeah, it may run, but Windows is going to take half of that, or whatever your operating system is. I'm not familiar with Linux or Macs, so I'm assuming their memory resources aren't as big as Windows is. So, but I know on a PC, on a Windows PC, Windows is going to take 4 gigs to just run by itself. So it's one of those things that's going to leave the other 4 gigs for whatever program software that you're using to record and edit things with. So you always want to go more. So get at least 16 and up. I mean, you don't have to go crazy, like I said, but 16, if you want to get a little bit extra, do 32 gigs. You'll be just fine with that. Outside of that, I would say that's usually the biggest things. Make sure your computer has overhead, choose the correct audio equipment properly, and then just keep fine-tuning. Never settle with what you have unless you absolutely just like your audio sounds and you like what you're doing. It all comes down to just, I mean, it's like anything in life. Trial and error and experience. A lot of things can affect your audio, like I said. Even hell, I can make a video, upload it to YouTube. YouTube will convert that video and then make my audio sound different and make the video show up different than I see it when I render it. So you got to take all of that into account. If you're streaming, then like I said before, your internet can play into a factor of that too. You're kind of stuck at the mercy with what they offer in your area. A lot of times internet companies they'll tell you like, oh, you have a fast internet, you have this. And in actuality, they're giving you shit. So know what you're paying for. Know what your upload speeds are. Know what your download speeds are. And when you're streaming, you have to set up whatever streaming software you use, whether that's OBS, Streamlabs, or, whatever program you decide to stream with, you have to set that up accordingly. And there's plenty of other, YouTubers that can explain how to do that for streaming and stuff like that. I kind of overdo my settings a little bit because I have the hardware to be able to do that. But I know you can fine tune that as well, and just through trial and error, match your connection and stuff like that. If it were me, I think I have a gigabit internet connection because I'm on the East Coast. So I have Verizon Fios, and I usually get anywhere from 800 megabytes up or down and up any given day. So I don't have any problems streaming, playing co-op games with people and stuff like that. I mean, it is what it is. But if you're in an area where you just only have, let's say, like DSL or a lower grade internet package, that your company provides, then you just have to work with that. I mean, it either comes down to that or move, and a lot of people aren't moving to maintain their YouTuber or streamer status and stuff like that. So with that, you just gotta work around the problem. If you have a slow upload speed, like I know that's one of the issues that, let's say, Jolly suffers with his internet connection, where he has a great download speed, but he doesn't get a whole lot of upload speed. So whenever we do things like co-op games or stuff like that, that's going to cause problems with that because your connection has to be split among both of the parties or whoever you're playing with if you're hosting a game. So it's going to be playing fine for his end. But let's say if like I'm watching him play something, what I get is going to be slow, or he may have his connection is trying to send the video or the stream out to me, and it may cause him to have like input lag or something like that on his end. So your connection plays into a lot of that. So if you don't have a good connection, what I would recommend is turning off everything on your computer or anything in your house that is using the internet, if you can. I know a lot of people have other people living in their house, so they're not going to turn off the internet just so you can stream or record a YouTube video or something. So, but do it as much as you can. Turn off everything else except what you're using. The more things you turn off, the more things that's not using your internet connection, the more your internet connection is using it for what you want it to. So turn off any additional smart TVs, any voice activated devices like Alexa or Google Voice, on a computer. Close out everything except the streaming software you use and whatever you're recording with and whatever game you're playing. Turn off all the web browsers, turn off all the additional programs, anything that can be using the internet, so to speak. Turn all of that off because all of that's going to eat up your bandwidth speeds. And if you can, always go wired with your internet connection. Wi-Fi is great. Yeah, you can make it so you don't have to deal with wires. But when you go over when you use a Wi-Fi internet connection, a lot of things can interfere with that Wi-Fi signal to cause your speeds to mess up, essentially. Anything from other people's Wi-Fi connections, microwaves, the walls in your house, if you have water pipes in your house, like, running to a bathroom or to a kitchen or something like that, even those can interfere with your Wi-Fi signal going past them. So like if your connection or if your router's in one room and you have a bathroom and then you have your bedroom on like the other side of the house or something like that, the Wi-Fi has to get past your bathroom and that can cause problems with your connection. So if you go wired, yeah, you may have to deal with the Ethernet cable being run to like your Xbox, your PlayStation, or your computer, but at least then you're not getting any kind of interference and you should be getting at least most of what you pay for as far as your connection speed. So that's a big one. I know not a lot of people do that anymore. I've been doing tech support for probably the past 15 years. And I take calls like that all the time when they be like, oh, I got a good connection and I got Wi-Fi and I got a really good connection. They said it was good. And I'd be like, let me test your connection real quick. And you come back with some shit. It's just the way it is. That's why if you look at any server farm, any major company, anybody who values that connection, they don't do Wi-Fi. It's always Ethernet. For a lot of the hardcore servers and the equipment and stuff like that, they may do Wi-Fi so you can connect to the network and get internet, but as far as like maintaining connections and you want the best connection possible, always Ethernet. And in addition to that, just so I can tackle on this too, not all Ethernet cables are made the same either. If you already do wired, and let's say you have an Ethernet cable and it runs fine, Ethernet cables have gotten better over the past, let's say 5 or 6 years. So you may be using an old busted cable and yeah, it may work for what you do. But if you go get, let's say, a high grade Ethernet cable, from Amazon, Newegg, wherever, you can get a high end cable and plug it up and have it perform better. So just because you have something and it may be working now, you can always improve everything because not all cables are rated the same. To tackle on another note with that too, it's like that with everything that you hook a cable into. Ethernet, HDMI, audio cables, VGA cables that hook up monitors and stuff to computers. It's all like that. Not all cables are made the same. There's companies out there that make better quality of cables that you can hook up a lot of that stuff to. A lot of it you don't have to spend money on, but in my opinion, at least when it comes to audio cables, HDMI cables and Ethernet cables, do those. You know, monitor cables are kind of standard. Hell, a lot of monitors do HDMI and DVI cables, so those should be fine. But if you're having HDMI cable, definitely get one that's, let's say, rated for like 4K, 60 frames per second or higher. If you're getting an audio cable to do something, make sure it's a higher grade audio cable. Like if you're doing like an XLR microphone, get a higher grade XLR cable to go along with that. And like I've already mentioned the Ethernet one, so that way if you get the higher grade cables, they, all of the stuff that you get the cables for will perform better for whatever you decide to do it with. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, I'll throw down all of my equipment down in the video description. But if you guys want to, hear me talk more, or at least in depth, about a lot of this stuff, I can do that too. That's no problem. I've been doing, like I said, I've been doing YouTube since 2009. And I've ran the gauntlet as far as equipment, from video equipment, audio equipment, and microphones and that kind of sort of thing. I've been buying stuff ever since, people, ever since HD got on YouTube. And, so if you guys want to ask me any questions, just jot them down in the comment section. I know me and Jolly like to read everything. So he'll probably even let me know, even if I miss the question, so I can, I'll always try to go back up and answer it. But if you guys want to see me get in depth with any piece of my equipment too, whether that's my computer, compressor, EQ, mixer, whatever, what have you, let me know that too, because I can show you at least some settings and stuff that I fine tune to get, the quality of my voice. And, maybe that might help you guys in the future. So just let me know down in the comments below. But my name is Denonu, and I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Peace out.